So, apparently, there's another Nintendo Warriors game. Are you sound upset? No. This puts a smile on my face. As you all know, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is planned to be released on Nintendo Switch on November 20 of this year, 2020, and I'm super excited to play this version of Hyrule Warriors. This isn't the first Nintendo Warriors game, for there were two before the Age of Calamity. Let me explain. Hyrule Warriors was the first Nintendo Warriors game, I assume. It was released on the Wii U on August 14, 2014. For that game, the roster was seriously huge. It even grew more bigger in the definitive edition, the Switch version. Hyrule Warriors has 38 playable characters that have their own unique gameplay style. Trust me, you may want to remember this fact. As for the story of the game, this takes place in a universe separate from the canon story. You may already know that the game involves the Triforce: power, courage, and wisdom. If one wields all three, they are granted a wish. Not like a genie-like wish. No, an impossible type of wish. Apparently, there is a being that has been tasked to watch over the Triforce. That person is Sia. She was once good, but her desire over Link and her jealousy against Zelda was an inciting incident for Hyrule Warriors. Due to her desire and jealousy, it grew into evil, plunging Hyrule to darkness. But when she was struck down by Link, Zelda, and many of the characters from the games like Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, and Ocarina of Time, the world was saved. Until Ganondorf, and as well as the evil forces from Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess showed up. And as usual, you must defeat Ganondorf, sealing the darkness away. The plot was really good, however, it lacked the belief that these events happened in the actual Zelda timeline. As a story writer, and of course, as a person who loves storytelling, I am bothered by the canonicity of a story. But this game by itself is amazingly fun to play if I forget about it. Plus, the story was still good. The next Nintendo Warriors game is Fire Emblem Warriors. Not gonna lie, this was straight up disappointing. I am a Fire Emblem fan, but this game was not good for me. I would explain the game's plot, but this video is covering the Zelda game, not Fire Emblem. First off, the reason why Fire Emblem Warriors was a disappointment for me is the gameplay aspect. There are about 32 playable characters, but it involved a number of copy and paste of combo moves when it comes to the characters. I understand that there is a class system where you can move faster in speed value when you're a sword master in the actual games, but it does not explain why some of these characters have the exact same fighting style like another character. It was the charm of these Warriors games that I enjoyed, the unique combat abilities that these characters have, their own way of adapting to the war they had to fight in. Second, it's not as good as Hyrule Warriors. They don't even allow you to play as the villains, and that is sad. Once again, just because the actual game doesn't allow that, doesn't mean you have to stick to it. Hyrule Warriors enables you to play as the villain, making you help them grow. Lastly, I do admit that it is fun to play Fire Emblem Warriors from time to time, but the fact that this was not on par with what they did with Hyrule Warriors, I can't even stand my frustration with this game. Anyways, back to the topic. You may be wondering why I am mentioning Fire Emblem Warriors in this Zelda video, yes? It's because Hyrule Warriors and Fire Emblem Warriors have the exact same scenario. Crossover. The The story has always been focused on many other games in their own franchise and combining them in one story. It is a great fan service like Super Smash Bros., but if it has a story, it is really risky to create a new character and a new plot just for the sake of covering up the reason why the many different worlds are combining at force. For Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, this is a different story. It is common logic that you should play Zelda Breath of the Wild before playing the sequel or the prequel. However, if you are the very few who has never played Breath of the Wild and you are interested in this game, I wouldn't blame you. You can actually start from the prequel if all I care. Because this game, as mentioned by the great Eiji Aonuma, stated that this game takes place before the events of Breath of the Wild in terms of timeline. This is the perfect opportunity to explore that time and state of the world that we are so fond of, so used to, on a more massive scale. Let's get on to why that is. Story. Warning, if you have not played Breath of the Wild, which you should, I'm giving you a spoiler warning. The reason why it is perfect to make a Warriors game for this particular event is because it started 10,000 years ago, when Impa reveals the true history of Hyrule, the true history of Ganon, to Link, or in a sense, to the player. The anticipation of Ganon's arrival 10,000 years ago, prior to the Breath of the Wild, was planned and well calculated. It was revealed that the automatons known as the Guardians were built to fight against Ganon, as well as the 4 divine beasts who are piloted by the 4 other races, Zora, Goron, Rito, and Gerudo, the 4 champions of Hyrule.
Hyrule was then blossoming as a highly advanced civilization. Even the most powerful monsters posed little threat to the denizens of the realm. The people thought it wise to utilize their technological prowess to ensure the safety of the land should Calamity Ganon ever return. They constructed 4 mechanical wonders that came to be known as the Divine Beasts. They also built a legion of autonomous weapons called Guardians. The Divine Beasts were piloted by 4 individuals of exceptional skill from across the land. And thus, the plan to neutralize Ganon was forged. Upon Ganon's inevitable return to Hyrule, the princess and the hero fought alongside these 4 champions against this ancient evil. The Guardians tasked with protecting the hero as the Divine Beasts unleashed a furious attack upon their terrible foe. And when the hero wielding the sword that seals the darkness delivered his final blow, the princess used her sacred power to seal away Calamity Ganon.
The fight against Ganon and his maliceful monsters against Link, Zelda, the Guardians, and the Divine Beasts can be imagined in many ways. And now, we get to at least have a taste of that type of fight with the rise of Ganon. If you think back on the memories that Link had to recall, Zelda mentioned that there has been a rise of monsters coming about. in great numbers and in great strength.
That cut doesn't look too bad, actually. You're fine for now. But you know, there's a fine line between courage and recklessness. As brave as you are, that does not make you immortal. It seems that not only is the frequency of these types of attacks on the rise, but the scale of beasts we are facing is intensifying as well. I fear that this is an omen which portends the return of Calamity Ganon. And, if that's the case, I'm ready to expect the worst. We'll need to make preparations as soon as possible.
With that said, the story focusing on the events before Breath of the Wild is what will make this the best Nintendo Warriors game, because it has a singular purpose: to retell a story not many would know. Plus, the story in this game is canon because it only focuses on the events of the Breath of the Wild universe, unlike the first Hyrule Warriors. Let's look back at the trailer. The story will most likely start off with Link fighting as a soldier, rather than the Chosen One. As you can see here, he is raising his sword to pledge towards the royal family before the battle. Next off, we have Zelda in her royal blue attire along with Mipha, meaning that the events of finding her power of the goddess will most likely be part of this game, which is needed because that is her character arc for Breath of the Wild. In the next scene, we see Rivali dodging Link like a badass, but aiming at Link. It seems that this may actually be the first time they have met, for in this shot it doesn't look like Rivali has the royal blue scarf that he wears as the chosen one of the Ritos. Either way, this may also solidify the relationship that Link and Rivali has, because in Breath of the Wild, he wanted to prove that he was better than Link, but at the same time, he respected Link, even after death. Next, apparently there's a certain point that the champions will start fighting against their own ally, the Guardians. The event when Ganon turns those weapons against its own creators. This may explain more on what happened when all hell breaks loose and Hyrule immediately loses control of the fight. In this shot, we can see Link in his soldier armor, as well as Zelda. The most interesting figure in the room is the Sheikah tribewoman. Could it be Pura, the head scientist of the Ancient Civilization Division, the one who repaired the Sheikah slate, and at the time when she was not de-aged permanently? Which is a very interesting story in Breath of the Wild. Or could it be Impa? Either the case, we will most likely see Pura and Impa in their younger state, for they are key characters in Breath of the Wild. The next one is an intriguing story that I want to see in detail. In the game, there is a respawn mechanic that will resurrect monsters beaten by Link. It is known as the Blood Moon. Maybe the Blood Moon started making its appearance before Ganon awakes. We'll have to wait and see. And lastly, there is the Yiga soldiers. As a reminder, the Yiga tribe is the opposite side of the Sheikah tribe. They worship Ganon and will assassinate any of his enemies on sight with no hesitation. They are also quite fond of bananas. This is something that may be updated in a later video because it is hard to tell all the details from the gameplay, including that there will be more information about Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity on September 26. So, from the first gameplay scene, we see that the enemies will also damage their own. The Moblin attacked Bokoblins and Hylian soldiers on the battlefield. Maybe bigger monsters, and of course, the mini-bosses will have that effect. Next up, you can see Link throwing bombs made from the Sheikah slate. This could be an item that has a cooldown that can be used like Breath of the Wild. Or maybe it is part of his moveset. Hard to tell, but I wage more on it being an item. Moving on, we have Zelda attacking a red Lynel with the Sheikah Slate powers. That shit is hilarious. Mipha in this shot is probably doing a critical move on a Guardian. Critical moves occur when you break enemy's defense bar. We then see Urbosa dodging, like a badass, as a way to illustrate that it could be one of the fighting mechanics for the playable characters as it was for Breath of the Wild. This is to the point where I have no idea if it would happen, but maybe. As you can see, there is a Divine Beast right there in the background. Maybe the Divine Beast would be used during this time period. Maybe a war event where there is a surge of enemies and the Divine Beast will help counter that stratagem. The reason I think about this is because the Divine Beasts are capable of doing more than just shooting a Hyper Beam at Ganon, because they had their special weaponry active when Link tries to purify each Divine Beast. Maybe we'll be able to see the Divine Beasts more in action. And finally, the size. When it comes to Warriors games, there are maps which can be explored and certain areas are used for certain events in wars or battles. I am guessing that the character roster will not be as big as its previous, which was 38 characters. For this game, I count 5 characters. It's small as hell, right? But what I am guessing is that the remaining space for the game is for detailed story cutscene events and as well as the battle map size and battle flow. Because in Nintendo eShop, the estimated size of the game is 15.6 gigabytes, more than Fire Emblem Warriors at 13.3 gigabytes, Hyrule Warriors at 12.9 gigabytes, and Breath of the Wild at 14.4 gigabytes, making the data size questionable for this game. There is a lot that this game can tell us before the sequel. To many of you, it may seem to be a filler, a game to pass the time, as well as increasing the hype for the sequel. I agree. This could be the best Nintendo Warriors game that can ever happen. Unless they make the 10,000-year-old legend a Warriors game, then that would be the best, but I highly doubt that would happen. Having a Warriors game is pretty neat because you can make the most beloved characters become a war god. For events when there is a battle between two forces, you are going to need a bigger oomph to replicate a great conflict, which is why a Warriors hack and slash gameplay is the best game direction for this occasion. Hell, we may not have an HD remaster of an old game, Skyward Sword. That may happen next year, as next year will mark the 35th anniversary for the Zelda franchise. But as for this year, we have Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, and I couldn't get any more happier than this. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is set to be released on November 20, with more information on September 26. You can also pre-order the game now in the Nintendo eShop to get what I believe is the strongest weapon in the franchise, the Lucky Ladle. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Please share this channel, this video to everyone. It would help out a lot. But please, let's take a moment to listen to that beautiful music. I am so excited for this game. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.